Good day to you all, and welcome to Bad Excellence, the podcast where we turn tough days into opportunities for growth. I'm Brian Walsh, an optimist with over a decade of experience in marketing, leadership, and personal transformation. During that time, I have lost over 100 pounds, run a marathon, wrote a book, and worked with some of the most inspiring people I've ever met. Each week, we dive into the art of habit formation and how you can apply it to your life, career, and beyond. The other day, I had the pleasure of talking with Amanda from Operation Phoenix. Her mission? To make work suck less. So let's jump into that conversation and see what we can learn a little bit more about employee retention and team building exercises. So Amanda, tell me about your absolute favorite job.
Yeah, so I've done a lot of different things over my career. The thing that I enjoy the most is definitely team building, planning the activities, coming up with what to do, figuring out ways to get adults to participate with each other where they don't hate it. And that's very hard. Because I've learned, some people don't really like team building all too much, which is understandable because I think it has a bad reputation because it's not really talked about why we do it. And we do it so that it's easier to work with the people that we work with because you spend a lot of time with them. So you kind of need to be able to you need to at least be able to communicate and get along on some level. You don't have to be best friends, and that's a big misconception in team building. Every time I'm talking to people about it, they're like, I don't want to be friends with my coworkers. I'm like, you don't need to be friends, but you need to know how to work together. And that's really all team building is. But I have so much fun coming up with creative ideas for different groups of people to do. I would do it all day, every day if I could.
That's awesome. Can you talk a little bit about what makes a good team building exercise?
Absolutely. So definitely during working hours, no matter what that looks like for your business. I actually had somebody comment and be like, we all work in different shifts and I'm the only one working during my shift. So my team building activity is not really. I'm like, oh, that's a bummer. If you can make it work during working hours, which you should be able to, a lunch hour, that's the other thing. That's a big misconception that you need all this time. I have so many activities and events that can be done in 1 or 2 hours. So like a long lunch hour, started at 4, go to a happy hour at 4 if you want to go to a happy hour. But asking people to stay later or come in earlier or come in on a weekend for a team building activity is probably not going to go over well because people really feel like they spend the majority of their time at work because they do, the people going into work. They don't need to spend more time there. Leaders need to prioritize giving people time to get to know each other because it's important to getting the work done. Because another thing that is not thought about enough, the better they are at working together, the faster they work. So that's a
Productivity hack.
yeah. Let's stay focused on team building. So definitely during working hours. I also recommend to not make them mandatory. And that is not you don't have to come out and say that, but you can come out you can just say we're doing this. And most people usually attend because especially if it's during the working hours, they think it's part of their job. But letting people know that if something comes up and they can't be there, it's not that big of a deal. That is especially true if you're doing something outside of regular working hours. That if you're going to do something outside of working hours, you can't make it mandatory because that's just, people are not going to like that.
Actually, to pull on that a little bit further, especially around the activities and the time constraints.
Yeah.
I have an activity that I do with my teams every Friday. I call it a fun Friday, right? We have daily stand-ups. Do you have any blockers? How can I help you? But my Fun Friday segment, I have product owners that join our stand-up that on Fridays just for the Fun Friday segment. And all it is a random question. Maybe it's a goofy situation, or I had one where the entire team collaborated to figure it out. Man. And so I gave them this riddle. It was a longer riddle, and there were 7 people on the call, and one person figured out one part of it, then the next person and it was a total team building exercise. And the reason why I do it is to engage our system to thinking, which is our deep thinking, the actual cognitive reasoning part of our brains. Because the first system is our reactionary. That's the one where like you say red and I think fire hydrant, right? Like something just really quick. But the system 2 thinking is always like, well, can you name me 3 things in the room that are violet? And then you start thinking, right? By Friday, our brains are mush.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I kickstart it with some of these creative questions, but also it builds in this fun aspect of like your handle on TikTok, work shouldn't suck, right? Meetings shouldn't suck.
They shouldn't.
There's always opportunities, and these micro little interactions kind of build towards that, creating that culture, not necessarily of all fun. Like it's not like I'm trying to be Google. I'm just trying for us to be us, create that environment of trust to mess around a little bit, explore who we are.
Yeah.
In fact, last week, I asked my Fun Friday question to every team, and every team member was, poof, I'm a genie. If you could change one thing about this company, what would you do? And why did I ask that? Was because I wanted to find out in a sneaky way, what are their pain points?
Right.
And then all of a sudden I noticed that about 1/3 of them wanted to connect. We're all remote. September, we're all going to meet up at headquarters for our quarterly planning. I'm going to put the call out and say, hey, book a flight. Let's go. Let's connect.
It doesn't have to be a big involved event. I think a lot of people, when they think of team building, they think like happy hours or picnics or these like bigger events. And it doesn't have to be that. It's something as simple as asking that question to everybody, because all you're doing is trying to understand the people you're working with. That's the goal. So anything that does that is team building.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest stats I heard the other day, I'm listening to Mel Robbins' The Let Them Theory. She mentions that between 20 and 60, you spend more time with your coworkers than you do your family and friends.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, that's just crazy. But
It
it
is.
doesn't mean you'll be able to be friends, or let alone should you be friends with
Right.
the individuals. You still need time with them. We work in a multi-generational environment. So we're at different points in time, different priorities. So it doesn't always align.
Yeah.
So but you can't force it. I think that's one of the things that we have to understand.
You definitely can't force it. And it's just so important because, as you mentioned, like the generational differences, each generation has a very different communication style. Like it is, and I've worked with all of them up and down. Like it's just so different across the board. So if you're not taking the time to get to know somebody and understand like how they talk and communicate, you're gonna like have friction because you're gonna like it's just human nature to like take it personally if you don't understand something, you know? So I don't know. There's just so many positives to it. I could talk about it forever.
I know. So here, I want to try something with you. All right. I want you to finish this sentence.
Okay.
Yes. The real reason people quit.
The real reason people quit is usually due to leadership, honestly. And in that context, I'm talking about all levels of leadership. It can be an executive, it could be your manager, anybody above you, because the leaders are responsible for the culture, the tone, the atmosphere of the workplace. If the leaders at the top are not taking the time to make sure their managers actually know how to manage and lead people, it creates all these problems, from miscommunications to accountability, like everything in between. So people get frustrated, they don't feel heard, they can't get along with their manager because they feel like their manager doesn't have their back because their manager is reporting to leadership.
Yeah.
So that is usually one of the top reasons. Another very big reason that I've personally seen with the people I've worked with is no growth, nowhere to go, no new opportunities, nothing to do. Like employers get all in their head about competitive comp and perks, and it's just like, that's not it. There needs to be trust and there needs to be growth. And if you have those two things, most people are going to stay. But team building is a big part of both of those things, as well as just planning and like understanding how your team works so you know what you need and what paths they can take in the future. Because if you hire somebody at an entry or mid-level and you don't have anywhere for them to go, they're not going to stay.
Yes, absolutely. I left a great job, a great company, because I wanted to move up. And multiple times that I had interviewed for specific roles and it didn't happen. And I'm not saying that they were wrong, because maybe I wasn't ready,
Mm-hmm.
but I wanted the responsibility. I wanted the opportunity to prove myself. And even an HR rep told me sometimes you have to go outside in order to go up.
That's a good
And
all
that,
right.
yeah, yes, it is. And I think that's one of the differences between leadership and HR, right? Because I feel a lot in today, especially if it's a private company or like a smaller company where the owners are so focused on and so invested in the company that they often forget about creating an environment where others could even have the opportunity to become invested in. This is why I try to coach the 70% rule. If someone can do something up to about 70%, give it to them
Right.
and then coach them the rest of the way, because now all of a sudden they increase their competency. And if they do a consistency, then they're confident. And if you invest in them, they amplify it back tenfold. That
Yeah.
All right, Amanda, hot take. Pay is not the retention strategy, it's the receipt. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
Oh, I definitely agree. I think, honestly, I think paying somebody is the bare minimum employers need to offer for somebody to work with them, right? There are so many other things employees should be getting out of their employment other than a paycheck and like other than benefits, even. They need challenge and growth and development. They need community. They need mentors. Like we all as individuals need these things and work should be supplying them, because where else having time outside of work to find those things is so difficult as an adult, that if we don't invest in our employees, they're not going to grow and learn, and then our business does not grow and learn, you know?
Amanda, when did you realize that perks were not the problem? What data actually hit you in the face?
Yeah. So when I got promoted in my last position from manager to director, it was during a transition period. It was actually during the pandemic, and we had lost a few people, and I was in charge of exit interviews, and I kind of revamped the whole process. And I did these exit interviews with this group of people that left, because sometimes that happens. And then I took that data and I analyzed it, because I didn't just do an exit interview. I didn't just get on the phone and ask them a few questions. We had a form with scale ratings on it. So I had actual data points to look at. And I did a whole analysis on those exit interviews. There was like 5 or 6, I think, and like 1 or 2 from the previous year. So I used all of that data and I came up with data points and analysis on why people were leaving other than pay. Because in my opinion, that's just the easy way out to say it's pay. And in this analysis, particularly, actually very few people clicked the pay. It was more of like a different opportunity. Most of the people we found left because there was no growth happening. There was nowhere to go, nowhere for them to go. So that's really when I realized like we could offer, because I mean, we had good benefits and the pay was competitive at the time. So like that wasn't the problem. Remote work didn't change anything. Like it was all the other things. It was the lack of connection because we went remote. It was lack of growth because it was 2020.
Yeah.
Like lack of like professional development plans, which is something we had, and then they kind of faded out because there was no real process. So like these were the things that people actually cared about other than how much they were paid. I like to say all the time, every job pays you. Every job pays you. So it's, what else can they offer you? And that was really my wake up call in my operations career. Like pay is just one thing. There's all these other things that will make people happy at their job.
If you could track only 3 signals to predict flight risk, what would they be?
So the first one is communication. If somebody is not speaking up, not having new ideas, not giving feedback, honestly, whether or not they usually do, if they're just silent, that is a big red flag. It means they don't feel safe and they don't feel comfortable. Another one would probably be promotion tracks, not necessarily because of the money, but because of the career growth opportunities. If somebody hasn't been promoted in quite a long time, it's worth looking into why. And if it's like their choice, which can definitely happen, there are people who want to just stay in their role and perfect their role, which is totally fine. But if you have a high performer who hasn't been moving up in a while, you might want to check in and figure out what's going on there. The third one, I'll say lack of participation with the team if you do team building. I know I said earlier, like they don't need to be mandatory and they shouldn't be mandatory. But if somebody doesn't want to go to anything the team is doing inside or outside of working hours, there's a problem. Whether that problem is with the team or with the work or with the company, you got to check in and find out.
And that concludes our conversation with Amanda over at Operation Phoenix. If you have any questions, drop them in the comments. And as always, thank you so much for watching Bad Day Excellence. I'm Brian Walsh, your biggest champion and your guide to habit crafting. I'll see you next time.